Problems. We all have problems. Do you have problems, Tara?
I do. I was just thinking about some problems the other day that would be great for the business model canvas. Problems like we tried to rent an RV. They're booked. RV parks are booked everywhere, and none of the RV parks around this area have a lake. I wanted something lakeside. Problem that I encounter all the time, and you all are going to think I'm crazy, but whenever I am in a hotel, I have to read these, and you all see what I have on? I have to read these little bitty shampoo bottles, and I don't know, I have put lotion in my hair more than one time. And I'm involved with another company whose problem is that women are overwhelmed by makeup. So these, some simple, and some real problems, just like the RV thing is just a real problem. So those are just three silly questions, silly problems that somebody could start a business on.
Well, and that's why I would say they're actually not silly. I mean, there are billion-dollar businesses that start just on solving those simple problems. For instance, I know of a gentleman out of Illinois, and he started his business figuring out the better way to make bumpers on your car. Now, who takes the time to think about bumpers? But this guy owns the Jacksonville Jaguars. So when you think about it, solving problems can be a really important way to go. I know I have 2 kids, and sometimes those 2 kids have to be in the same place or different places at different times, and there are not 2 of me. So I would love for someone to figure out how to figure that problem out, and I would pay to figure that out. So just so you, any problem is something for an entrepreneur to look at as an opportunity to make money. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time now thinking about how you can make this work for you in your DECA written event. So Tara, how about we move along and let's look at our 3 main guiding questions and talk about why those are important. Awesome. So we're going to use these 3 questions that you see here to help us write this section of your DECA written event for problem in the business model canvas. First, we're going to look at it in terms of the market. Then we're going to take a look at it in terms of the consumer. And lastly, we're going to look at how we know what we know. So Tara, I'm going to switch back to you.
All right.
So Tara, I think these 3 guiding questions can help our members. What do you think?
I definitely think that this is unique when it comes to generating business ideas. It's not solely unique because always meeting a problem has been a reason why people start businesses, but this is like the sole reason. And so I like the questions that you've put together for the students to take a look at, a little more in-depth look at their problem and if it has really great potential for one of the entrepreneurship events and possibly even a business in real life. So I think DECA gives us such a great opportunity to explore these opportunities in entrepreneurship. So let's blaze through these slides and allow the students to really think about just getting a good overview of the questions that they need to answer about the problems. And Jen, I'm going to I'll be the PowerPoints as you need me to, and you can expand on each one.
That sounds like a great plan. And actually, you touch on a point that I think is so important for our student members to realize. When you're looking at an entrepreneurship event, the more real you make this process, the more real that paper is, the more real your success will be on this stage. Because that judge who is serving as a potential investor wants to see realistic information, realistic ideas. So I'm glad that you touched on that. So with your permission, let's dive in and get started. So our first guiding question looks at our market. And we're going to talk about some really specific questions here to help you understand what kind of information is relevant to answering that question. So let me talk with you a little bit about these specific questions. And Tara, I'll let you decide if we're looking at the slide or looking at me. But the first one to me is one of the most important. Have you defined your market? Do you understand where your problem or service will actually be sold in terms of your industry? So for example, if I wanted a great new hairbrush that always makes my hair fizz-free, which I would love, that market is going to be defined in terms of hair care or beauty care or personal care. And you really need to take some time to figure out where that product fits. You also need to think about how much this market might be worth. Are there other items in the market that you're going to be competing against? So you better understand where you're going to position this business. You're also going to take a look at how you can actually demonstrate that there is a problem. Now, that might sound a little bit hard to understand, so let's think about that. How do I know that a consumer has a problem? Well, if you've looked at the Lean Startup, you are talking to the more quotes, testimonials, data that you can have from them, the better. But they're not your only source of information for answering this question. You can use your secondary resources like a trade association, like online newspapers, or different databases that can share information with you that shows there's a problem in your market. So your primary and secondary research is going to be really important to answer that question. Which leads us, of course, to our next one. My favorite word when it comes to written events, data. Just because you think there's a problem doesn't mean there actually is. You need to take the time to actually validate that this problem exists. And we do that with data. Your judge is going to ask you, how do you know this really exists? And you want to say, when we surveyed 100 consumers, 75% said this. Or you may want to go and say, when we did our research with the trade association for our industry, it showed 80% for this. That helps validate it's not just you thinking that this is a good idea, there's more to it. I always encourage members when they're looking at written events to do this very last question, and that's to look at testimonials. How great is it to show a picture of a consumer or a graph with consumers or even a potential video of your consumer saying, oh, it would be so nice if I had somebody who could do this or could help me figure out how to do that. Now you've made the problem real and you've made it come alive, and it helps you to understand what that business really is and the impact you can have as an entrepreneur on the market. So Tara, let's just take a moment. And I'd love to ask you, Tara, now that we've kind of talked about these questions in depth, do you have any questions that you think would help our members as they approach this section?
I think what you've said is just ideal. You have to have information that's valid information to support the problem. So as we go back over this very first question slide here, about defining your problem. What problems do exist? Have you defined it? can you demonstrate the problem? Do you have data? And do you have testimonials of people begging for what it is that will solve this problem? And I think that's perfect. I think you've covered it.
Great, Tara. Then let's talk a little bit about the consumer perspective when we're addressing the problem in our written event. Okay, so our main guiding question here is, does the consumer know the problem exists? And there's really not a right or a wrong answer to this question. Some consumers are going to know about their problems. Some are not. How did we know we couldn't live without an iPad or a cell phone? We didn't know that we had that problem until the product already was there. So just so you know, as you're approaching this, there really isn't a right or a wrong. You do want some information, though, to guide you. So that gets us to our specific questions here that will help you write this section. First, do you know who your consumer is? And that sounds like a pretty broad question, and it actually leads to another section in your business model canvas. But here we want you to begin to think about who would actually buy this that you have developed to answer this problem. And again, you're going to hear my favorite word, data. Do you have information that confirms that it's this consumer that needs a problem solved? And again, that starts tying information together from our previous guiding question. Have you done some secondary research to find out if this consumer is really searching for some kind of solution to a problem in this market? And then you might want to address, do they know this problem exists or do they not? Sometimes as consumers, we will give our opinions about something and not realize we're actually asking for someone to help us with a problem. That leads me to the next question. What do consumers know about your market? Is your consumer super educated about wanting a laptop or wanting a new car or a great new pair of shoes that are eco-friendly? Sometimes what they know and can talk to you about in the market informs you as an entrepreneur, because it's going to help you know how to educate them about your product or service or business overall. Lastly, you'll start to see here, we really do want you to take the time to talk to potential consumers. And this last question can really be helpful as you look at this section. How would a consumer want their problem to be solved? They might have some really great ideas that will inform you in how you develop a solution to this problem. Remember, an entrepreneur doesn't always have the best ideas. When we take the time to our consumer about what they want and where their problem lies, they might give us some information that could impact what we develop and therefore make our product more attractive to purchase. And that's really important when we go in front of our judge. So Tara, what do you think about our consumer as it relates to the problem section of the written event?
I love this slide because it really makes sense when you have a particular problem and solution tentatively in mind. Let's go to the shampoo and conditioner in the hotel, for example, for just a moment. So hold on just a minute. I'm going to pop up here live maybe. Here we go. Let's talk about that shampoo conditioner situation and lotion. I want bigger text, you know, so that I could just see it, because I have to wear glasses. But maybe if I talk to other people who all, you know, my son's not a candidate. He could read that clearly. But if you talk to other people who have to wear glasses when they're getting in the shower at a hotel, they might say, I don't even want to have to read anything. I need the shampoo to be green, the conditioner to be yellow, and the lotion to be red, or whatever. So you come up with different solutions when you talk to your potential market. And you have to talk to your potential market. Now, it doesn't mean that my son maybe has the best idea and solution. So that's where your research and your data comes in. You know, people that know the market can give ideas that maybe even your customers wouldn't think of the solution. So I'm just loving this as we dive in, because I'm an entrepreneur. And you know, CU was something that I even had as a potential product in mind years ago. And so we started CU, not quickly, but we started it. But every year we hear from our consumers on how to make it better because of a problem that might exist in using CU. So I'm loving it. So I don't want to make this video forever today. We have 6 slides to go over, and we've really been clicking right along here. We're on slide number 4, I think. Let me get back over to that, and Jen, you can see where we're headed next. So are you seeing the slide there?
We want to advance just one more so we can talk about how do we know what we know. Perfect.
Cool.
So our last guiding question here is, how do we know the problem exists? Let's pull it all together. So what do we know about the market? We're going to pull some information forward. What do we know about what's currently offered that addresses this problem? And you might luck out. There might be nothing in the market right now that offers. But just make sure you've taken the time to really see what might be competing in terms of what the consumer thinks of. And lastly, our favorite word, data. What data do you have that confirms a problem exists? What you want to avoid is an assumption that there's a problem. Give yourself some hard facts that really is something that we can address as an entrepreneur. What do you think, Tara?
I love how you keep looping back around to data. This last bullet point on this slide says, what data do you have? Don't make an assumption, because we know that assumptions are simply just gut feelings, and maybe could be based on 1 or 2 opinions, and that does not equate to data. So I like the fact that you keep reminding the students how important it is to have data, even as you identify your problem, to substantiate that problem, to provide rationale to the judge for the problem.
Fantastic. Well, let's try to wrap this up for our students so they can get to work. I know that's their favorite part. All right, so you know what you got to do. You've got to get, I used to say pen to paper, now it's just hands to your keyboard to write this section of your written event. So in the DECA guide, which you always want to reference, it asks you to talk about the top 3 problems that your product or service addresses. If you've looked at our guiding questions, you should have a lot of information here to validate 3 areas that you can help address. Make sure that you're using that information that you've researched to give a full look at what that problem is. For example, you can say, my very first problem that this product will address is, and you're going to fill in that blank. And then you can say, our market information shows that. You can say, we've talked to our consumers and they have shared. In fact, we did some further analysis and found out. So those are really great ways to tie all of this together. What I do want to make sure that you avoid, though, is don't talk about how your product addresses it. You just want to talk about the problem here, because how your product does what it does actually goes somewhere else. So Tara, do you think they're ready? Can they tackle this problem section?
I hope so, because you've given them a lot of good guiding questions to identify the problem. And I like on even the last slide, it says, don't talk about the product yet, talk about the problem. And in this section, you are just simply identifying a good solid problem. It exists. So if it's an RV park, well, that would be like the product or the service. So forget about that for just a minute. The problem is all RV parks are sold out. 80% of the hot seasons of RV camping. So you've got to substantiate that. You need to do a survey. You need to go to those RV parks by computer. You know, you just can graph it geographically. Or if it's the shampoo situation, you need to substantiate the problem that there's so many people that say that's a problem. I'm not the only one that put lotion in my hair, for example. Then you substantiate that that is a problem. If it's the makeup situation that women are overwhelmed by makeup, then you need to do a survey or some kind of focus groups to substantiate the problem exists. So you're just really staking your claim to the fact that you have a good problem. Identification, right?
Right. And I would highlight here that any take a photo if they're doing a focus group or a survey or anything like that. That comes in real handy later when we talk about presentations or actually putting the whole paper together. So definitely take time to do those little things as well.
Great. Jen, you were cutting out just a little bit there as you said something about take a photo if you're doing a focus group. Did you say something before that? Because sometimes our Google Hangout kind of dips in our voice quality and our video quality. So I just want to make sure that the students capture that last little tidbit that you suggested.
So when you're looking at research, anytime you can take a photo of you talking to consumers or actually collecting those surveys or anything like that, those come in handy really for your presentation, for your boards, or even pictures within your paper. So don't forget those little things as well as you're working through this process.